Well, before I begin, there are two, 3 points which I need to point out. So, if I may, with all due respect, with my friend, I disagree with the fact that rape laws is regarding female upliftment or the sympathy. First of all, rape laws are regarding the recognition that body integrity is impact, and it's my personal rights that no one has a right to violate my body integrity. Now, that being said, when we talk about neutrality in rape laws, it is important to know that we are not specifying or referring to only males or females, but also to other sections of the society, such as transgenders, which have been recently recognized as the third gender by the Honorable Supreme Court. Now, when we talk about rape, without any iota of doubt, it can be said that rape is one of the most heinous crime, which is repugnant affronts against human dignity and against body integrity of any individual, irrespective of the gender. However, unfortunately, in our country, it is presumed that only women get abused and men does not get abused, and therefore men are only seen as the perpetrator. Let alone forget about the protection or the recognition given to transgenders, which have been recognized as a separate gender only recently. Now, therefore, when we talk about rape laws being gender neutral, it has been called or termed as totally devoid of social reality regarding sexual aspects in our country. Now, if we see the rationale or the reason behind the same could be attributed to many presumptions, such as men cannot be raped because it's against the stigma of masculinity. Imagine a man getting raped. Oh, please, it's outrageously being rejected because men cannot be raped. Men need no protection. Another stigmas could be that women cannot rape because they are not physically impact. Well, I disagree totally because I believe men and women are equal. I do agree that men and women biologically and in some aspects are not equal, but isn't it our duty, the law's duty, to make them equally in every upfront? Now, that being said, acknowledging that the rapes have historically been a tool for the gender subordination and dominance, but it does not constitute a justification that we differentiate sexual aspects, sexual assaults on the basis of gender discriminations on the perpetrator and the victim framework. Now, therefore, when we talk about neutrality, neutrality means with respect to victim as well as the perpetrator. That means victim in rape could be anyone, irrespective of their gender, men, women, transgender. Similar manner, a perpetrator could be anyone, men, women, transgender. So when we talk about gender neutral rape laws, we are not referring to only the perpetrators or the victims. We are referring to the situation as a whole, that in this society, rape is a heinous crime and everyone and anyone could be victim of it, not just because he is a man or woman. It's similarly the stereotype attaching that men do not cry. Being a man, I'm telling you and I'm clarifying over here is that yes, men do cry. And therefore, is the stigma needs to be stopped that men cannot be raped. Now, for that, the bigger question comes before us is that does in India men get raped? The reference should be made to the 2013 Justice Verma's committee report, in which they have acknowledged the fact that yes, men in India do get raped. And therefore, the recommendation was that in India, the rape should be interchanged with the term sexual assault and the rape law should be made more gender neutral. However, it was outrageously rejected by different sections of the society. Reason being, again, the stigma attached to the male masculinity that men in India cannot be raped. Now, one of the questions that comes before the person's favoring the stigma that the rape law should be gender specific is that till now in India there has not even single reported case of men being raped. And it is true. I have researched gone to an extent and I have not come across even a single case when a man has been reported of being raped. There are two reasons for the same. Number one is that no law in India recognizes men being raped, that too by a woman. The whole concept is based on men's dominance, patriarchal society's ideology, that men holds a dominant position in society and therefore they cannot be raped. Now, in the end,
Jatin, I'll have to
I
ask you.
say,
I'll have to
please,
ask you.
yes, I'll be wrapping up. In the end, I would like to conclude with the fact that a rape victim is a rape victim, irrespective of their gender. And when we talk about gender neutral laws regarding rape, it is not regarding prosecuting women or other sections of society, but rather it is regarding the protection of the men. So by making rape laws gender neutral, we are making a statement against male sexuality, and we are changing the position towards the terminology of consent, which I believe will not even help only men but also the women. Thank you.
Thank you, Jatin. I think Jatin is a very important point that a victim as well as a perpetrator can be of any gender. Now it's over to Aditya Dassaur to speak against the motion.
Thank you so much, Shivam. I'd like to wish a very good morning to all my fellow contestants and Rajinder ma'am and all the people who are viewing us in the audience. Uh, when I begin with my statement to oppose the topic for today, that gender laws should be made neutral, I draw my motivation from the very fact that God has created human beings in such a manner that there are possible anatomical differences between men and women, which there is no denying. Now, when I say this, it is not, it should not be construed in a manner that I just say this because there are physical differences in terms of strength. But there are a lot of other differences in the way a man and woman lives and performs various activities, including sexual activities, which makes me to make my point here that rape laws should not be made gender neutral at all. And laws in a country, they generally reflect the mood of the society and the cultural differences in the society, and they're generally enacted keeping in mind those people who are most vulnerable to those societal differences and the societal mindsets. So considering the society that we are in, even in the 20th 21st century modern India, it would not be wrong to say that not many men are wronged as many women. Perhaps that is the reason why we have gender specific laws protecting women if there are matrimonial discords or other discords, domestic violence cases. All these laws have been enacted keeping in mind the societal differences, and so is the case even in rape cases. And one thing we have to keep in mind: the topic for today is not about sexual assault. We're talking about rape. And if we were to pick up the Indian Penal Code right now and read the definition of rape under section given provided for under section 375, we would see that the definition provided therein is very specific to that of a woman, because it talks about instances where penetration is done to a woman's private parts, and it involves and concerns cases where a woman is probably unconscious, or where a woman is probably intoxicated and not in a state of mind to give her consent to the act. If you were to put the same situation onto a man, do you think it is possible to rape a man when he is drunk? Do you think it is possible to rape a man when he is unconscious? The answer would be a clear no. And that is what the point. That is the entire point that I'm trying to make here. That the anatomical, differences that are imbibed in our bodies naturally, they make it perhaps, if not impossible, 99% very difficult for a woman to rape a man. And this is only the beginning of it. If I were to move on to my next point, in order to corroborate my argument, I would also like to point out over here that sexual offences, the offence of rape is not only physical in manner, as has been reiterated by the Honorable Apex Court time and again, that it is an offence which attacks the very mental state of a woman. So if you were to consider forceful penetration of a woman to leave such an indelible mark on a woman's mind, and if you were to say take the same example for a man. Would you be in a position to say that making somebody forcefully penetrate you would leave the same indelible mental mark on somebody's mind? The answer would definitely not be in the affirmative. And there have been various petitions in the Honorable Apex Court time and again, wherein the activists and various people, they've demanded to make the rape laws gender neutral. But the Supreme Court has very rightly observed, not once but on a number of occasions, that there are laws already in place to protect the dignity of men in such cases. If we talk about 377, if we talk about the Prevention of Children from Sexual Offences Act, the laws are already there in place. So why do activists the so-called activists who are wanting to, favor with women, I am all for feminism and everything, but when they're talking about rape laws and when they're talking about 375 specifically.
Aditya, I'll have to ask you to adjust your mic. Your voice is trailing off.
Hello.
It's better now.
Yeah. So
yes.
I was saying that when we're talking about 375 and the penal code, the provisions which protect women from rape, I think personally that it cannot be made gender neutral at all, and perhaps this is the reason why various countries in the world have not yet made rape laws gender neutral. And I know
I'll have to ask you to wrap up, not because your point is very contentious, but just because you're out of time.
Yeah, I'll just wrap it up in a second. Various countries in the world, they've not made the rape laws gender neutral. United Kingdom has enacted a law which makes the offences of sexual assault gender neutral, but they specifically and categorically point out the difference in their objective of the act itself, that there are anatomical differences between men and women which cannot be done away with.
Thank you, Aditya. Aditya has very ably pointed out that due to anatomical differences, rape cannot be construed to be a gender neutral offense. I'll hand over the debate to Surabhi to present her views for the motion.
Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Chair and the Moderator, I will be speaking for the motion. The definition of rape under Section 375 of the Indian Penal Code makes it clear that only a man can commit rape and only a woman can be raped. Therefore, rape laws in India are gender specific. These gender specific rape laws of India are based on two fallacious assumptions. First assumption, that rape is an act of sex alone to satisfy lust, thereby negating the important fact that rape can also be used as a tool to showcase dominance, superiority, or even to humiliate a person. Second assumption, that there are only two genders in the society, that is male and female, thereby overlooking the plight of transgender victims. The transgenders have recently been recognized as a third gender in the society after the judgment of NALSA versus Union of India 2014. And in tandem with that judgment, the Transgender Person Protection of Rights Act 2019 has been enacted. Now, as per this act, Section 18D of this act states that sexual abuse of a transgender is punishable with minimum of 6 months imprisonment and maximum of 2 years imprisonment. Now, a rape of a woman is punishable with a maximum of life imprisonment, whereas rape of a transgender is punishable with maximum of only 2 years imprisonment. Therefore, we are downplaying the gravity of sexual offenses against transgenders. Now, talking about the male victims. Now, sexual abuse against a male below the age of 18 years is dealt with under the POCSO Act. And secondly, sexual abuse of males above the age of 18 years is dealt with under Section 377 of IPC. It is called sodomy, and sadly, there is no minimum punishment for this. Now, the problem with Section 377 of IPC and Transgender Protection of Rights Act is threefold. Firstly, these provisions do not make use of the term rape. Therefore, we are saying that coercive sexual intercourse by a man on a man, by a woman on a man, and by any person on a transgender is not classified as rape in India, even though technically it is rape. And secondly, By not classifying these acts as rape, we are denying the male victims and the transgender victims the benefit of Section 376 IPC, which deals with aggravated form of rape, where the perpetrator is a person in position of power or dominance over the victim. And thirdly, we are denying the male victims and the transgender victims the benefit of Section 114A of the Indian Evidence Act, which makes a presumption against consent of the victim. Now, due to all these reasons, the rape laws of India are a blatant violation of Article 14, 15, and 21 of the Constitution. Therefore, they should be made gender neutral. By gender neutral, I mean neutrality both in terms of the perpetrator and as well as in terms of the victim. Now, gender neutrality in terms of the perpetrator would mean that anyone can commit rape, a man, woman, or a transgender. In the case of Priya Patel versus State of MP 2006, the Honorable Apex Court held that women cannot be held to have committed gang rape on another woman. I respectfully disagree with this judgment because of the reason that after the 2013 Amendment Act, the definition of rape has been broadened. It is no longer restricted to penile vaginal intercourse. It also now includes insertion of objects, oral and anal penetration, and even manipulation of body parts. Now, in Bodhisattva Gautam versus Shubhra Chakrabarti and Railway Board versus Chandrima Das, the Honorable Apex Court has held that rape violates the fundamental rights as well as the human rights of the victim. And if rape is a violation of human rights, then we cannot be selective in the protection affording to the victims on the basis of the gender of the victim. Now, if we go back to UDHR, which is the parent document of almost all the constitutions of the world, Article 2 of UDHR states that there should be no discrimination on basis of sex, among other things. And this is also the wording of Article 15 of the Indian Constitution. Now, but Section 375 IPC does exactly that. Now, I will step on my foot and say that the wording of Article 15.3 may tempt us to justify the constitutionality of Section 375 IPC. But that will be wrong because Article 15.3 is merely an enabling provision for the government to provide higher threshold of protection to women and children. But in doing that, the government cannot abdicate its constitutional duty of protecting its citizens from human rights violations. Therefore, this means that the scale has to be balanced, and it is not balanced in the present case. And I would like to conclude by saying that India must follow the footsteps of other countries such as UK, US, and Canada in making rape laws gender neutral. Thank you.
Thank you, Surabhi. So the floor will be open for debate. I'll first like to start with Manik and Aditya. There was a petition in the Supreme Court recently which said that it was a petition by the Criminal Justice Society. It said that if the rape law is not actually extended to all genders and is restricted to women, the petition argued that the ability of the victims to acknowledge that they're being victimized is actually hampered. What do you have to say on that? I'll go with Manik first. Yes.
I would like to add in that because if the gender laws are made, if the rape laws are made gender neutral, we are living in a masculine society. The men are considered as more powerful than women. They have more rights at present than women. If these rape laws are made gender neutral, it will give a weapon in their hand. They will be set free to rape any woman, and then if that woman will complain against the men, then the men can also raise a counter complaint against that woman that no, I was not the one who has penetrated her. She was the one who raped me.
Okay. So what do you have to say about that, Aditya?
Yeah. While I'd like to agree with my fellow speaker number 2, in essence that, the rape laws should not be made gender neutral, I'd like to disagree when he, in support of his argument says that, it is about masculinity. I'd like to, reiterate what I said before, that it is not at all about masculinity, but rather it is about a reflection of what is happening in the society today. As I said earlier, that, laws always are enacted in order to reflect the, things going on in the society. Now, if the activists, today, they come and say and they're all for gender neutrality in rape laws. I'd like to ask very respectfully those activists, where are they when there are discriminations in favor of women in all other spheres of the society? Be it elections, be it educational institutions, be it a seat in the bus or a train. There are always reservations for women, and I am all in support of it. But that only reflects the mood and the sentiment and the cultural differences in the society. Now, if we were to take those into account, the rape laws could not be in any eventuality made gender neutral. That is my exact point. And as speaker number 5 in her opening statement, very rightly mentioned that, there can be instances of a man raping a man and a transgender raping a transgender. Well, ma'am, where are you when there, you're not raising a point of a woman raping a woman? What about that? There are no laws, which protect a woman being raped by a woman. So let's just try to bring in all those aspects into consideration. Let's just see how the society is functioning in today's day before, asking the courts, asking the legislature to enact a law which makes rape laws gender neutral. And as far as victimization is concerned, there are domestic violence laws in the country which are absolutely gender specific. There are harassment laws. 498A is there, and being practicing advocates, and all of us are from legal fraternity. We know what happens in courts. We know, although a lot of cases are genuine, but some of them are not. So that is the case here. Victimization cannot be taken in a straitjacketed formula. And while there can be instances where men can fall prey to it, but we already have laws to protect them from that. We don't need to really disturb the laws that are there to protect women only. That will be my point.
I'd like to go to Surabhi because I think she wants to add this conversation.
Yes, firstly, the argument that was made right now that there are already laws in place and we need not disturb that. Well, I think I have elucidated that how these current laws are not sufficient, and in fact, they discriminate against male victims as well as transgenders. Now, coming back to the point that Mr. Dassaur raised, that about women raping women, why there is no law on that. Well, I'd like to state that after the judgment of Navteej Singh Johar, LGBTQ community has now legally been recognized. That is, we now say that sexual act between consenting adults is now not a crime. Now, when we say that, then why, on the other hand, we are reluctant to recognize non-consensual sexual acts between that very community? Currently, Section 377 says that between that community itself, I'm talking about the LGBTQ community, non-consensual sexual acts are called sodomy. There is no minimum punishment for this, and they are gravely inadequate as compared to the rape laws relating to women. So right now, in effect, we are again being discriminatory towards this particular community by not giving it adequate protection on par with the women. Now, I would like to add that this 377 includes the case of a woman raping a woman, to make my point clear. Now, I would also like to state that speaker number 4, Mr. Dassaur, has said that women cannot physically rape men because of the differences, biological, economical differences between the two. I'd like to state here that right now the definition of rape is not restricted to penile vaginal intercourse, and it has been broadened to include insertion of objects, oral and penile penetration, and manipulation of body parts. Therefore, now rape is not only that rape is not only defined in the traditional sense of the word.
Thank you so much, Surabhi. I'd like to go to Jatin to express his views on this.
Yeah. So going through all these conversations, if you all could, comprehend that there is a race going on between recognition of women rapes and men rapes. My issue is that both the things, whether a woman getting raped or men getting raped, is equally wrong. There is like no difference, women getting raped and men getting raped. Rape itself is a crime, irrespective of who is the victim. So most of the person says that biologically or physically men cannot be raped. I disagree. And even for the sake of argument, if we assume that men cannot be raped and that's why they should not be recognized under rape laws, it's wrong. The mere fact that whether men can be raped or not is irrespective of the fact that men has a right not to be raped, which needs to be recognized. Now, I don't say that women's rights are different or somewhere more stigma is attached to the women rape. Yes, because in today's society, the current scenario sees that special protection needs to be given. But that does not nowhere contains that men should not be protected too. When we are talking about protection of men, why it is taken as a direct attack on the protection already given to the women? That is my question. When we are recognizing the protection under rape laws to men or transgender, why somewhere it is being feel that protection given to women is reduced? Nowhere it determines that the women have been now less protected. Rather, it supports the spirituality that everyone is equal before law, for the law, and the social stigma of the subordinate determination or domain will be reduced if we recognize the fact that men too can be raped. So I completely disagree with the fact that men cannot be raped physically or otherwise. Men has a right to be recognized that they can be raped and they needs to be protected. In doesn't matter if they are actually raped or not. I have a right not to be raped, and that should be recognized. That is my all I have to say.
Thank you, Jatin. I'll be coming back to those who are speaking for the motion again. As has been pointed by Aditya as well as by Surabhi, that there are already laws in place which are actually protecting the right of the other genders. So why do you say that the rape laws need to be changed when those laws can actually be strengthened or a minimum punishment can be prescribed in those laws? Why does the definition of rape do you feel has to be changed? I'll start with Surabhi first.
Sure.
In my opinion, those laws are inadequate, and strengthening those, there is a difference between strengthening those laws and broadening the definition of rape. Because
Manik, could you hear the question, or were you disconnected? Okay, I'll just repeat the question. My question is to those who are speaking for the motion. It's that it has been admitted that there are laws already in place to punish those who are raping maybe the third gender or the men. And I have put a question that why can't those laws be strengthened instead of changing the definition of rape? And I'm starting with Surabhi with this question.
In my opinion, there is a difference between strengthening those laws and making in expanding the current definition of rape. Because what we are doing here in essence is categorizing people on the basis of their gender, on the basis of their sex, which is explicitly barred by Article 15 of the Constitution, and also UDHR, ICCPR, all the international covenants say the same thing. So there is no justification whatsoever in classifying, categorizing, and discriminating people on the basis of their gender, on the basis of their sex. So this is the first point. That is why the definition of rape has to be broadened, and a humanistic view of the situation has to be taken. Secondly, we have seen that the existing laws are extremely insufficient in the protection they provide, and it is better to expand the definition of rape rather than making separate laws for the reasons I've just said.
Coming to Jatin.
So I totally agree with Surabhi, and further adding on, when we talk about the protection already given, it is essential to see whether the same is adequate or not. So under POSCO, if we say men and women have been given equal rights under 18 of years age, and the term therefore defined as sexual assault, not that particularly of rape. So my question is, if a man or any other person like woman can be sexually assaulted under the age of 18, what is stopping them from being assaulted or raped, even men after the age of 18? And when we come about section 377, one needs to see that section 377 talks about unnatural sex. So when the Supreme Court said that with the consent, it talks about basically the homosexuality and somewhere the transgenders. Nowhere Section 377 can cover the aspect of women raping a man, because that would not be termed as unnatural sex. So we see there is no law existing till date which defines men getting raped by women. Even Section 377 would not cover a man being getting raped by women. And the biggest thing is that a rape is a rape. You cannot term it as rape for women, but some other terminology for men or other community. So therefore, equality has to be given in respect of respecting body of any individual. That's all.
Thank you so much, Jatin. Your point very well made. I'll be going over to Aditya to express his views on this.
Now, as my fellow speaker number 5 has just pointed out, that the UDHR provides for certain protections, and also Article 15 of our own Constitution provides for this. But I'd like to remind the audience and my fellow speaker here that while Article 15 says no discrimination on the basis of religion or sex, it also provides for special protection for vulnerable groups such as women and children. So what are we to do about that? So if in the cultural, socio-cultural fabric of the nation as it exists today, would it be wrong to say that women are more prone to such offenses, women are more prone to fall victim to such heinous acts than men? Would it be wrong to say that? So if there is a special law which protects women against such heinous offenses, so what is wrong with that? And as far as protecting men is concerned, I'd like to again reiterate, as has been stated by my fellow speaker number 3, that 377 does not adequately cover it. I'd like to pose this question to him: what makes him say that? Because if you were to read the definition of Section 377, and if you were to take it along with Section 375 and compare the both, there are evident differences which ought to be there when we talk about sexual offenses against a man and that against a woman. As I said in my opening statement, 375, and my fellow speaker number 5 rightly pointed out, it has now been elaborated to include insertion of objects and everything. But the essence of 375 remains penetration, forceful penetration without consent. Now, what is consent? Consent is, a voluntary act of doing something. Now, if we were to say that, a man has been raped by a woman, how do you say did he get an erection without being aroused? How do you say that it was not voluntary or consensual on his part when he indulged in that activity? So would it be safe for us to say that the man has been raped? So coming back to my point again, Shivam, I'd like to reiterate that there are possible and evident differences in a man and woman when it comes to reflexes in the body in sexual activities, which make it if not plausible, or if not acceptable, it makes it only natural for there to be differences in the rape law, and they have to be gender specific in favor of women.
Thank you so much, Aditya. I know that Surabhi and Jatin want to answer to this, but I'll ask you to hold your thoughts because I want to get Manik's views first on this question.
Yes, I completely agree with speaker number 4, whatever he says. And I'd like to add that we should not forget that laws are made for the society, and whatever happens in society and whatever is happening in the society, to prevent the evil, we should not. We should look for the laws for the future, but not by sacrificing the present. Presently, 70% of India's population is still living in rural areas, and further there is a problem which is still rising, is like domestic violence against men also. We should not ignore this thing. Then first of all, I would like to say that about strengthening of the present laws. The present laws which exist, like prevention of domestic violence against women, the word for women should be replaced with for the persons who are living in a matrimonial relationship. Presently, there are a number of cases which are increasing, reporting violence by the girl against the man. And secondly, I would like to add about section 377, which was rightly pointed out by my friend speaker number 4, that section 377 clearly differentiates with 76. It says that it only in the Navdesh and Johar, they only decriminalize only that part, like which says that the sex between the same sexes with consent is decriminalized. All other which means the sex which the sex which is without the consent is still criminalized. We cannot say that there are no laws which protect the men, or there are no laws which protect the LGBT community. Section 377 can still be recourse to. And my friend speaker number 5 was saying that about the punishment, that there are the punishment is only about 2 years. No, that is not the point. Read the section 377 again. It clearly says that there is a punishment of life imprisonment and the maximum minimum up to 10 years. So, and further adding coming to the Article 15, they were saying that a person should not be discriminated on the basis of caste, sex, religion. But we have to keep in mind Article 14. No law can be made by violating Article 14. Like I said in my introduction speech, that there has to be equity above equality. We cannot provide each and every person who is in the society on a upper chair, on a lower chair with the same thing. To bring them to the same level, we have to do equity instead of equality. At present, the women are not on the same level as the men are. To bring the women to the level of the men, first of all, the present laws which are existing, they should be made more and more stringent to bring the women up. The problem of the men cannot be ignored, but at present we cannot ignore the problem of the women which are still facing in the society.
Thank you, Manik. Thank you, Manik. I think the speakers want to counter to this. I'll start with Surabhi because I started with Jatin earlier.
The comment made right now by speaker number 1 regarding the 2 years maximum punishment, I want to clarify that we should be clear on the laws. I said 2 years is the maximum punishment under the Transgender Protection of Rights Act 2019, the section 18D. Rape of a transgender is punished with minimum 6 months punishment and maximum of 2 years punishment, and 377 on the other hand has no minimum punishment. So we should be clear on that. My statement was probably misconstrued. Now coming back to the statements made by speaker number 4, the question that was raised regarding Article 15.3, I agree that the wording of Article 15.3 may tempt us to justify the constitutionality of Section 375 IPC, but that will be wrong for the reason that Article 15.3 is merely an enabling provision for the government to provide higher thresholds of protection to women and children. This is one point of the argument, but in doing so, on the same time, the government cannot abandon its constitutional duty of protecting human rights violations of its citizens. And I am not saying that rape is a human rights violation. The Supreme Court has said so in Bodhisattva Gautam versus Shubhra Chakravarti and Railway Board versus Chandripa Das 2002. So these are two arguments which have to be balanced. So we may come to a conclusion. On one hand, there is the question of women and children, upliftment of women and children. On the other hand, the fundamental rights and the human rights of its entire citizens. Now, Delhi High Court, back in 1998's opinioned that rape laws should not be made gender specific. Rape laws should not be made a special offense against a woman. In fact, it should be made a sexual assault, and they should be made gender neutral.
I'll ask you to sum it up in brief.
One thing, speaker number 4 said that erection is not possible when a man is raped. I would like to say that erection is no longer sine qua non for rape, and it is no longer essential because the definition of rape has been widened to include insertion of objects as well. Thank you.
I think speaker number 4 wants to reply to this. Please go ahead.
My friend speaker number 5 has, very vehemently argued that the courts have time and again held that, not including men in this definition would amount to human rights violation. Well, I would like to pose a question to my friend here that does she have any judgment, to support her argument, wherein the Indian courts have said that, the rape laws should be made gender neutral? Because as far as I can recall, just as recent as 2019, the Honorable Apex Court, while dealing with such a petition, termed it as irrelevant and frivolous, and also stated and reiterated that there are laws already in place to protect men from any such offenses, and it would be wrong to say that, they amount to human right violations.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Coming to Jatin, sorry to keep you waiting.
Sure, it's fine. So first of all, clarifying regarding the PIL, I would like to add that in 2008, PIL was filed in Delhi High Court, in which Delhi High Court seek the reply of the Central Ministry. And in that reply, Central Ministry said that there are already existing laws protecting the other sections of the society. So nowhere any court has ever stated that there no needs to be gender-specific laws. Further, pointing to the PIL of 2019 Supreme Court, the Supreme Court dismissed the petition only on the grounds that it is the work of the legislature to look after these aspects. It nowhere stated or made a statement in any ratio part that the gender neutral law should not exist. Now coming to the 4 points, sir, I would like to say, first of all, when we were talking about Article 15, you said that women are vulnerable, so they need to be given certain protection. My question remains same, that how, by recognizing the protection to male under rape laws, the vulnerability of a woman is affected. Now that being said, I agree, we have a shattered legal system and it becomes difficult to prove as per the Evidence Act, but that is with existing laws also. Now, will you disagree? There have been instances when the rape laws have been misused by women. So only on the ground that the rape laws given to protection given to men will be misused, you are denying men certain aspects, certain dignity rights, which is fundamental to everyone's existence. Coming to section 377, sir, which you pointed out is inadequate. Sir, if you go through the section 377 talks about unnatural sex. So, in fact, even for your peace of mind, I assume that male getting raped is covered under 377, transgenders being raped is covered under 377. What 377 does not cover is women raping men. There exists no law till date which defines or which protects men being raped from women. Even section 377 would not protect men getting raped from women because that would not be termed as unnatural sex. Third thing, sir, you talked about that the rape law should be gender specific because women are vulnerable and there needs to be given specific protection. I do agree, sir. Women are vulnerable and they need to give certain protections. But that does not stop us recognizing that men also have a right to be protected under rape laws. There have been instances of many countries like Egypt, Ethiopia, where they recognize, where they have gender neutral laws, but they have harsher punishments for women rapes in comparison to male rapes. So I'm saying the first step would be the recognition itself. We are giving that men to get raped, men needs to be protected. The mere fact that we recognize that men can be raped is itself a big step towards progressiveness. And that's why I'm saying that fine, it's fine. You may have a difference of punishment, you may have different act itself, but please do recognize the fact that men too get raped and they need to be protected.
Thank you so much, Jatin. I see that this is a debate that has so many counterpoints. So I think everyone has something to say. If in one line, if everyone can sum it up, I'll allow. Aditya can go first.
Yeah, just countering to what my friend speaker number 3 just said, he probably gave me a piece of my mind. But sir, I might not be as learned as you, but I definitely know the difference between ratio and obiter dicta of a judgment. And if you were to read the judgment by the Honorable Supreme Court, in its obiter dicta, Honorable Justice Mishra categorically held that, there are laws already in place protective. And yes, they suggested the parliament to look into it, but they did not. I was not wrong to say that the Honorable Supreme Court held that.
No,
Thank you.
if I may counter you on that, please. You said that the Supreme Court stated that
Yes, it's stated, sir. Justice Mishra in the judgment
let
category.
me complete. Let me complete. Say, the statement, the state.
Do not speak out of turn. Aditya,
Yeah, sorry.
were you done, Aditya? We'll go to
Yeah.
Surabhi.
Yes, I'm done.
The points right now made, may I speak?
Please.
The points made by speaker number 2, he asked me to cite a case in favor of my argument, that is Suresh Chaku versus KC Chaku, 1998, Delhi High Court. Justice Jaspal Singh said that the rape laws should be made gender neutral and rape should be termed as a sexual assault and not a special crime against women. Now, coming back to the very contentious PIL of the recent times, well, yes, that PIL was dismissed, but I would like to add that Criminal Law Amendment Bill 2013 bill as well as the ordinance made rape a gender neutral law. However, sadly, we missed an opportunity here. This gender neutral rape law could not be culminated into the final Criminal Law Amendment Act due to backlash that was wrongly or rightly received from the feminist sector of the society. Now, regarding that, I would like to say that gender neutral rape law does not mean being anti-female. In fact, recognition of victimization of males does not in any way do away with or negate or mitigate the victimization of women. We are simply recognizing the victimization of another important class of society as well. And various feminists have also come forward and said that rape should be made a gender neutral law. One famous feminist I would like to quote here is Susan Brown Miller. In her essay Against a Will, Men, Women and Rape, she said that rape should no longer be based on the gender of the victim.
Thank you so much, Surabhi. Manik is just trying to get back. I think he's having some connectivity issues. Till that time, I'd like to point out something very pertinent that he said. He mentioned that equity is not equality. And how do we take that in the context of this debate? If I start with Jatin, what do you have to say on that?
I do agree that equity is not same as equality. In that aspect, also, I've earlier made a statement that the rape laws could be different for both men and women, as has been practiced in many countries like Ethiopia, Egypt. So, therefore, in the concept that you recognize rape laws protection to men and women would be equality, but you giving a special status to women because they being a vulnerable sector would be equity. So in this terminology that we are recognizing rape laws gender neutral for both men and women would be equality, and in those specific provisions could be made to the vulnerable section of women, so the additional protection could be given to them would be equity.
Okay. Aditya, if you'd like to add on to this.
Yeah, I just like to, reiterate what I said earlier, that, laws are made to cater to the needs of the society. And considering the socio-cultural fabric of the nation, I think the laws are perfectly appropriate whatsoever.
Thank you, Aditya. Surabhi, if you want to.
Yes,
Manik has joined us. Just a second. Manik, we were just talking. That's okay. Manik, what we're talking about is the point that you made that equity is not equality. And Jatin has already spoken. Aditya has made his point. Surabhi is going to make her point, and then we'll come to you.
Okay, I would like to address the statement that was recently made regarding that laws must reflect the modern society. Yes, I agree with that. Just as AP Shah has said that. I would like to also make a point here that with the recent Me Too movement on Twitter, where women came forward with their sexual abuse, there was also a movement called as Men Too. Yes, it was not as significant as Me Too, but there was a Men Too movement where men came forward and shared their stories of sexual abuse. And there is a growing recognition across various jurisdictions of the world regarding male victimization. It has been accepted by various countries. And also, I'd like to say that a recent survey was done of British and American males, and 8% of these males said they admitted that they were sexually abused.
So I'll ask you to keep it short. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Due to paucity of time.
8% males said that they were sexually abused in their adulthood. Majority of the perpetrator were men, but 15% of these perpetrators were females.
Thank you so much, Surabhi. Your final thoughts, Manik.
Yes, I will like to add to this thing that they were saying that there was a movement of Men Too. I would like to add that the most of the cases which were reported in men too were of the foreign countries, of the Western nations. Moreover, the PIL, which was filed in the Supreme Court, wherein Supreme Court directed, left it on the center to make the rape laws neutral, gender neutral rape laws. In that PIL also, all of the cases which were presented before the apex court were of the Western nation, not of India. There is no data which will suggest that a lot of cases like this are happening in India also. It may be a need of the future, but at present it is not the need of the nation. The need of nation is different. To make it is right to make the laws equal for everyone, but by keeping in mind the problems of the present, not of the future. I would say that these are not a problem of present. It may be the problem of future, but at present it is not the problem.
Thank you so much, Manik. We can see that everyone has a lot of points, and we can see why the debate has been there for more than 4 decades now. And it's going to be an ongoing debate till there's a conclusion. But I'd like to wrap this up, and I'd like to go to Rajinder ma'am to give the feedback to the contestants.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
So, it's a very interesting topic, this issue over there. I think all of you must have seen the film Thappad, which has been there in recently. So question was not there how much physically a person has been harmed. The question only was there how much a person self-respect has been harmed over there. So when we talk about these laws, I think in 2012, the Women of Ministry and Child Development has conducted one of the biggest survey in the world. And they took subject of approximately more than 12,000 people. And out of that survey, one thing was found that if children, I think around 60 children has been subject to sexual abuse, 56% of boys were also there in the same category. So when we talk about these issues, we are not talking about only relating to the gender aspect. We are talking about one more thing, that how much a person has suffered as an emotional or traumatic this situation has been to them. So more than physical, it has been surviving in the society. And when you put it as, I would rather say that females have been burdened with lot many things over there. If you talk about most of the honor killing, it is done in case of a female getting married with a lower caste. If a boy marries, no problem there with the family. So why the honor has been given to us? You keep it with the boys of the family. So they have been burdened with it. So the patriarchal society try to suppress the women, have created the laws which has been focused for women. So the need of an hour is to go for gender neutral, treat everyone as a human being rather than a man. It was wonderful to listen all of you. It was really nice and very happy to see the upcoming lawyers discussing the issues which are great. And I would like to announce the winner of this round.
Please do, ma'am. Thank you.
Can I announce it?
Please, ma'am. Not the scores, just the winner, please.
I think Surabhi is there. Jatin was equally good, but she was able to support with good examples and judgment over it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Just before we leave, ma'am, I'd like to give a shout out to the team who's organized this. Shreya, Shwetanshu, Aditya, Nirudh, Rahul, and Shwaz, who was supported by the mentors, Advocate Jatin Bansal sir and Advocate Satyesh Narula sir. I think it's a huge endeavor that they pulled off very well. Thank you so much to the organizers. Special shout out to Aditya for filling in today. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.